World War I, also known as the Great War, was a conflict that defined a generation and produced military figures whose legacies are debated to this day. Among these figures, Field Marshal Douglas Haig, the British commander of the Western Front during much of the war, stands out as one of the most controversial. Haig's leadership was marked by significant victories, but his strategies also led to some of the bloodiest battles in British military history. While some regard him as a hero who helped secure victory for the Allies, others criticize his tactics and the high casualty rates under his command. In this video, we will explore the life of Douglas Haig, his military career, his role in shaping British strategy during World War I, and the enduring debate over his legacy. Douglas Haig was born on June 19, 1861, in Edinburgh, Scotland. He came from a wealthy family involved in the whiskey distilling business and received a privileged education at Clifton College and Brasenose College, Oxford. Haig's interest in the military led him to attend the Royal Military College at Sandhurst, where he excelled and began a lifelong career in the British Army. Haig's early military career included service in the cavalry during the Sudan campaigns and the Second Boer War. These experiences gave him a strong foundation in military leadership and tactics, but they also rooted him in the traditional doctrines of cavalry warfare, which would later influence his approach during World War I. By the outbreak of the Great War, Haig had risen to the rank of general and was considered one of the British Army's most capable commanders. When World War I began in 1914, Haig was appointed to command the British Y Corps as part of the British Expeditionary Force, BEF, under the leadership of Sir John French. Haig quickly distinguished himself during the early battles of the war, including the Battle of Mons and the First Battle of Ypres, where he played a key role in holding back the advancing German forces. In December 1915, Haig replaced Sir John French as the Commander-in-Chief of the British Expeditionary Force. His promotion came at a critical juncture in the war, as the Western Front had devolved into a deadly stalemate characterized by trench warfare, with both sides struggling to gain ground. Haig believed that only through large-scale offensives could the stalemate be broken, and his tenure as commander would be defined by a series of massive battles aimed at breaking through German defenses. One of the most infamous battles of World War I, the Battle of the Somme, is inextricably linked with Haig's leadership. Launched on July 1, 1916, the Somme offensive was intended to relieve pressure on the French forces at Verdun and to decisively break through the German lines. However, the first day of the battle resulted in one of the bloodiest days in British military history, with over 57,000 casualties, including nearly 20,000 dead. Haig's strategy at the Somme has been the subject of much criticism. The initial bombardment intended to destroy German defenses failed to achieve its objectives, and British soldiers were met with heavy machine gun fire as they advanced across no man's land. Despite the staggering losses, Haig continued to press the offensive for several months, believing that the sustained pressure would eventually wear down the German forces. By the time the Battle of the Somme ended in November 1916, the British and French forces had gained a mere few miles of territory at the cost of over 1 million casualties on both sides. While some historians argue that the battle did weaken the German army and laid the groundwork for future victories, others view it as a symbol of the futility and carnage of trench warfare. Another major offensive associated with Haig's command was the Third Battle of Ypres, commonly known as the Battle of Passchendaele. Launched in July 1917, Passchendaele was intended to break through the German lines and secure control of key strategic points, including the Belgian ports used by German submarines. However, the battle quickly became bogged down in horrific conditions, with heavy rain turning the battlefield into a quagmire of mud and water-filled craters. The Battle of Passchendaele is often cited as one of the most grueling and costly battles of the war. Haig's decision to continue the offensive, despite the challenging terrain and high casualty rates, has been heavily criticized. By the time the battle ended in November 1917, British and Commonwealth forces had gained limited ground at the cost of over 250,000 casualties. While Haig's supporters argue that his determination at Passchendaele helped keep the pressure on the German army, his critics view the battle as an example of the senseless loss of life that characterized much of the war on the Western Front. Despite the controversies surrounding Haig's earlier campaigns, his leadership during the final months of the war is widely regarded as a success. In 1918, following the collapse of the German Spring Offensive, Haig played a key role in coordinating the Allied counteroffensive, known as the 100 Days Offensive, which ultimately led to the end of the war. The 100 Days Offensive saw a series of coordinated attacks by British, French, American, and other Allied forces that overwhelmed the weakened German army. Haig's forces, now bolstered by new technologies such as tanks and aircraft, played a pivotal role in the Allied advance, recapturing key territories and driving the Germans back to their own borders. By November 11, 1918, the war was over, and the armistice was signed. Haig's role in the final victory solidified his place as one of the key military leaders responsible for the Allied triumph. Despite the criticisms that had plagued his earlier campaigns. After the war, Haig was hailed as a national hero in Britain. He was promoted to Field Marshal and created an Earl, receiving numerous honors for his service. Haig devoted much of his post-war career to supporting veterans, founding the Royal British Legion in 1921, an organization that continues to support military personnel and their families to this day. Despite his public recognition, Haig's legacy has remained a subject of intense debate. Some historians argue that Haig's leadership, though flawed, was crucial to the eventual victory over Germany. They point out that the challenges of trench warfare were unprecedented, and that Haig, like other commanders, was forced to adapt to the brutal realities of the Western Front. His determination to keep pressure on the Germans, they argue, contributed to the eventual collapse of the German war effort. However, critics of Haig, particularly those influenced by later interpretations of the war, have labeled him as a butcher who was too willing to sacrifice the lives of his soldiers in pursuit of unattainable objectives. The heavy casualties at battles like the Somme and Passchendaele remain points of contention, and many view Haig's strategies as emblematic of the failures of World War I leadership. Field Marshal Douglas Haig's role in World War I is one of complexity and contradiction. His leadership was marked by some of the most infamous battles of the war, where the cost in human life was staggering. Yet, his persistence and eventual success in breaking the German army's defenses during the 100 Days Offensive played a crucial part in the Allied victory. The debate over Haig's legacy will likely continue for generations, as historians grapple with the difficult choices made during one of the most devastating conflicts in history. What remains undeniable is that Haig's influence on the course of World War I was profound, and his impact on the British Army and its soldiers endures to this day. Thank you for watching our video on Field Marshal Douglas Haig, one of the most significant and controversial figures of World War I. If you found this exploration of his leadership and legacy interesting, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to Heroes Historia. We'd love to hear your thoughts on Haig's role in the war, so feel free to share your comments below. Stay tuned for more fascinating stories from history on Heroes Historia.